Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Groyper Report. Tonight, we have some groundbreaking news to share with you.
Welcome to the Groyper Report. Introducing the most racist men alive. They are shutting it down as we speak. Welcome to the Groyper Report. Sexist. Racist. Phobic this, phobic that. Terrorizing women across the country. Telling them to wear clothes. Saying all women are mid. Minorities fear them. The president has them on speed dial.
Guess what? Your body, my choice.
Brought to you by Frog Aura Maxing. Brought to you by Frog. GigaChat Central, yes, thank you for asking. They all must go. Welcome to the one and only. Defending the last white men on Earth. AtlasThugged and Josh Van Der Nord. This is the Groyper Report.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to another edition of the Groyper Report. I am your host, AtlasThugged, aka White Boy D Voice, aka another racially ambiguous Groyper, and I am joined by my co-host,
Joshua Van Der Nord, aka White Boy Normal Voice.
That's funny. And we are, I wasn't ready for that one. And we are the one network not afraid to say Christ is King. We have a lot to get into today. Obviously, this last week, in terms of the Groyper sphere, all things that are political, and just in general, the political scene at large has been chaotic, insane, and a lot of things happening, and a lot of stuff we're going to touch upon, and a lot of things that'll probably piss you off if you are a beta male. And what we had at the beginning of the week was a bit of beef between Jake Shields and Nick, which ultimately was quickly settled, and then turned into a scandal dropping that continued this kind of weird, chaotic environment. Then we ended up getting the Elijah Schaefer and Sarah Stock subplot littered all over the timeline. And I'm sure you guys are probably familiar with that at this point, given how, expansive that issue became. And then there towards the end of the week, we ended up getting a super show from Nick on Jeffrey Epstein, going harder into the nuances, which he finds to be more important than the ones that are largely being spread at large. Particularly the separation and nuance between Jewish supremacy and a Jewish fixer versus the extreme occult and satanic elements that go very far deep off the deep end, and touch on things like flat earth and other, and that kind of level of kookery. And then in addition, we did have Wednesday. There was no show for America First as well. But we do have some bits as well from Ian Carroll and Asmongold we'll explore as well. Expansive week. A lot of people got pissed off. Nothing different. But Josh, how are we doing?
I'm doing good, man. Honestly, I thought this was a really good week of shows. I'm excited to get into this because it's really juicy, and I'm more excited to talk about the Ian Carroll stuff. I'm sure we'll get into this Sarah Stock's stuff and everything. That's great. I enjoyed your video on that, by the way. That was very well done, because I don't really follow the Twitter drama as well as you and Zeb do.
Yeah, no.
So you were my little news station on that.
Oh, I appreciate that. And shout out to Tom Foe if he's watching. I actually but I took his advice on making the script for the video. I kind of freelanced it, because normally when I make my videos, I actually write out the entire thing. It's very verbatim. I'm basically just reading off my own script. But I freelanced that one. I basically just put the topic in front of me and then said my piece on it. It felt a lot more natural. I think I'll probably do that from here on out, because it just seems more YouTube-y versus news broadcasting.
I like that. I did notice that. I remembered there was one thing in the video where you kind of took a long pause for something, and I was like, this doesn't feel like normal Atlas. It feels like a live stream almost, but it was good. I liked the video. It was very natural. It did it had that feel to it.
I'm glad you liked it. And one thing before I forget too, it looks like Zeb finally logged back in for the first time in 2 months. Monetization seems to be back and in effect right now. However, we're not going to be doing any member streams tonight because we don't have any members, and because it reset everything, it knocked everybody out. So if we get a good member base and coming in next week on the NAV channel, we will go back to doing the member call-ins and get back to exactly where we were. And And again, I will say this too. I've had reports and seen reports across YouTube that the ads have been wonky. So hopefully nobody's getting spammed with like 4 or 5 ad plays in a row. But it happened to me the other day on a random channel, and YouTube needs to fix their stuff. But I think what we're going to do, we're going to start on Monday, because Monday but Monday broadly was a lot of people reacting to what was dumped from the Epstein files through the weekend. And as people were exploring them, things were circulating. And even when I aggregated a bunch of stuff to talk about on stream, I separated it by theme. So some of it was like, this is Bill Gates relative, this is Steve Bannon relative, this is relative to Pizzagate. But the biggest section by far, I just labeled it Goyim, was all of the elements of Jewish supremacy that were rampant through it. The amount of mentions of Goyim, wasp, the language. And I think that's probably the best element that came out of it, was it's paradigm shattering for a lot of people who have basically been screaming at and being told otherwise, that no, this is all fake, don't believe this is kookery, conspiracy, this is Nazi propaganda. But everybody got to see it with their own eyes as it was being lambasted all across the timeline. So we'll go to Monday with one of the first clips with Asmongold reacting to the Jewish stereotypes that are in the Epstein emails. And I think Asmongold kind of nails it. This is a combined clip between 2 of the larger items that came out with the Epstein files. Here it is. Looks like we are out of audio. Forgive me. Give me 1 second. I'm going to throw it back to Josh for a second while I fix this.
What's up, Groyper? I know Markets and Moto top Groypers in the chat. Big Nick Fuentes fan there. Yeah, so basically, what to say about the Epstein files? I've not seen this Asmongold clip we're about to get into, but essentially a bunch of crazy stuff. And honestly, it's one of those things where I don't really know what I expected to find in the files. Because some of the more sensational stuff, like I'm sure you guys have all seen the thing about how they ate a little girl and ate poop out of her like bowels and stuff. Don't really believe it. Don't like the more sensational stuff is a little bit more fantastic. I posted a tweet about how it's like what was going on the island. It's the scene from what's the movie? Indiana Jones, where like they open the ark and all the demons come out. I don't know, man. It probably wasn't that bad. I mean, let's be real. If Jeffrey Epstein had blood jacuzzis in his basement and could talk to demons, would he be on Xbox? I feel like there'd be more crazier stuff going on in his life where he doesn't have to play basic video games to get his kicks, so to speak.
Should be fixed now. We're going to try it one more time. I'm actually unsure what the issue is, so hopefully this is going to not be annoying AF. But should have both of us on screen here. Josh can keep talking for a second, and this should be getting switched over. Let's try this.
It's Jeffrey Epstein saying it. This is the way the Jew make money and made a fortune in the past 10 years, selling short the shipping futures. Let the Goyim deal in the real world. Oh my fucking God. Just every stereotype confirmed overnight. Holy fuck. Play the music? God. Play the music. That might be too much. I don't know if I'll be able to do that. I might get in trouble for that. Yeah, but trust me, if there was no TOS, I'd be playing it, okay? Like, just keep that in mind. I can't break too many rules. Not all in one day. Let me go back and see if I can find some more of these, too. The Epstein emails includes numerous derogatory messages towards Goyim. Oh, here we go. Here's even more of it. Let's see it. This is the way they... Oh, here we go. Goyim were born to only serve us, he said in a 2010 sermon. Without that, they have no place in the world, only to serve the people of Israel. guys, this is insane. Really. Really, like, I mean, this is like every stereotype, every paranoia, every conspiracy theory, everything just it all aligns. And it seems like I don't even know what to say. Wow. Conspiracy people always right. How is Nick going to react? I can't wait to find out.
So this was the JQ going mainstream, if you will. And when you see somebody like Asmongold reacting to it, knowing the audience that he has, and just seeing in general, like Cheeto, a lot of these big streamers reacting to it as it was coming out, obviously continues to move this kind of Overton window continually. And I guess, where do we go from here, right? And what we've already been kind of getting a little bit, I'm sure you guys are kind of used to this now too. You know, we're getting from Satya, thank you guys for becoming a member, we appreciate it. We're getting it from like Satya Bungar, we're getting it from Kevin O'Leary, we're getting it from many of these individuals who are pushing this kind of notion that the average American family or average American doesn't care about the Epstein files. And that seems to be where they're going, all while omitting all of these Jewish elements. And then what we're getting in the broader news cycle is, oh, look, like COVID stuff happening in California and COVID stuff happening in Vegas. Oh, look, and people are saying this should be the number one news story. And all of it seems to be a little bit of diverting away from what the actual real story is. I'm kind of curious, Josh, your thoughts on it so far.
Yeah. So as I was kind of saying, while you were fixing the technical problems, is there's so much sensational stuff in this, as Nick has pointed out throughout the week, which we'll get into some of those clips. It really takes away from kind of the main crux of things, which is look at who is in the files. Not even like, okay, we're trying to find out who sacrificed how many babies to Ball, but rather who is just in them in general. It's politicians, and it's a lot of wealthy Jewish billionaires in these institutional institutions. You know what I mean? Like, they're in tech, they're in security, pun intended. They're they're all over the place. And it's these people, it's like everyone knows who the president of the United States is. Who's the CEO of BlackRock? Who's the CEO of all of these like firms and whatnot. You don't know, but they are in fact more powerful than the president in some of these cases. And they're all over the files, and they all identify us as the other.
Exactly. You see the goyim in abundance, and the one in particular, the one that Asmongold reacts to in that last one we saw on Dataset 10, it didn't come from Epstein himself, but it came from a rabbi who was very influential and was like an advisor to Netanyahu. So like that's any better than if Epstein was saying it. But the kind of the wild elements of this is also all of like the things that have been getting pushed that aren't true. And so there's been a couple of those. I think the one that was immediately pushed, like in the immediate onset, was the bank being named Ball, when it was in reality it was like a misprint or a misscan. And you also see some of these other ones, like I think it was Morgan Ariel was pushing the one email where it had the equal 9, but the actual email, when you get rid of like the whatever it's doing on the printout, it says 19 years old, which still is like not the best thing in the world, but they were pushing it as it was said 9. There's a couple of these things that are getting pushed out and extrapolated, and all of it is diverting away from why was this done? Why was the operation being done? And what was the purpose of the operation? And it seems that a lot of people are falling more so into the element that they were doing it because purely for the element of doing like satanic rituals. And they're leaving out the element of the subversion and the diaspora. And I think that's kind of the biggest mistake that people are making.
One actual, it was actually a super chat that was on last night's show where Nick did his big deep dive into all of the Epstein connections to Peter Thiel, JD Vance, and everything. Someone said in the super chats that it actually seems like Epstein's Island and all of that was like I forget the term they used, but it was almost like a trust fall situation where it's like, it's not about, okay, I'm getting in and blackmailing all these people. It's kind of like he was getting blackmail on everyone, including the people that gave him the money in the first place, because it was like, look, we're all in this together type thing, Right. If any of us go down, we all go down, but that's their mindset, is we are all one person. And then it's like, I think, like having, and Nick said it as well, I think you get girls that are like 16, 17, 18 years old, and they are like, if they're attractive enough. I mean, you ever see that picture of Jerry Seinfeld where it's like he's 39 and look at his 17-year-old girlfriend, but you actually look at the picture and I'm like, if you didn't tell me she was 17, I would not know she was 17.
Yeah.
You get guys, old men who like young girls, we all do, and you get them in compromising positions.
Yeah, I think of like Bill Belichick, right? Like, I think that might be one of the most weird ones. Bill Belichick, former head coach of the Patriots at like their peak point. Most people would consider maybe he's the greatest coach of all time, and now he's at like UNC, and all that anybody wants to talk about is the fact that he's dating like an 18-year-old girl. I don't even know how young she is, but he's like pushing 60, 70, and it's like it's obvious he's playing something out. Like. That's him taking advantage of his status. The girl doesn't obviously like him for the way he looks, unless she's some kind of freak. I don't know. But you see this very commonly. And part of it, too, is this is kind of a sidebar, but you see a lot of women actually like actively say they do want these things. They're like, I just want a sugar daddy, right? I don't want a husband. I don't want a man. I just want a sugar daddy, right? I just want somebody to pay for my way through life. But I guess this is kind of this is the start of the Epstein stuff. This is some of the most like insane, like in your face kind of elements in there too. All of which I would say is like, there does need to be a reopened investigation into this. There does need to be all of these elements and ends need to be searched and investigated. But I believe I saw a report that came out even earlier today talking about how Pam Bondi may have personally herself asked for actions to reduce anti-Semitism around the country. So you can see what their number one operating principle is, and it's the protection of the Jewish people. And I think that's kind of hard to deny given all the actions and interactions from the Trump administration through the nation of Israel, and then everything else we've seen, just given just the nature of the Epstein files and everything else in between there too, and the Iran war that is pending and will be probably happening before we get to the end of 2026. Anything else you want to add before we move to the next clip?
Probably before the end of the month.
It seems that way, unfortunately. And but what's kind of wild is in this too, when nobody's reporting on the fact there was two elements that happened inside of this, right?
So
you have
go home.
One of them is that the USS Lincoln, not itself, but an F-35 jet shot down an Iranian drone that was approaching it aggressively. Now, the Iranian news, I don't think it was the Iranian military, but the Iranian news media had said, well, they had lost contact with it as it was in international waters. And so no harm, no foul. They shot the drone down. It said nobody got hurt. No equipment got damaged. But then it was after that it was an IRGC. I think it was 2 vessels and another drone was chasing down a U.S. flagged and U.S. crewed oil tanker. I forget the name of the oil tanker. It was like the Divina Mita or something like that. It had like a weird name. And they actively tried to board it. They said to turn your engine off. We're going and be prepared to be boarded. Now the U.S. tanker simply sped up, and I think ultimately other U.S. forces came around and they got pushed away. But you would think these would be very prominent things you'd be reporting about alongside everything happening with the Epstein files. And you would think if the media was doing its job, it would actively be connecting the dots between, look at how the Epstein files are coming out seemingly every time. The Trump administration is resistant to bombing Iran. And so, but again, we're not getting any kind of strong media reporting on this. We're getting a bunch of agenda-driven slop. And I just thought about that, given how close we are to war tensions, like, would that not be a number one thing to report on, like active military incursions and conflict happening in the Middle East? Go ahead.
Well, and that's another thing is we've established, it's been established that one of Israel's, or the IDF more specifically, one of their rules of engagement is to kill your own people in the event that they might be taken hostage so they can't be used as leverage later. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I almost think with this Epstein stuff, think about it like this. I think you and I, Atlas, were on the same page that, well, we know Tucker Carlson is a Fed. Tucker Carlson is a CIA or FBI asset of some kind. He's operating in one of those capacities. We would probably both agree that Candace is on the payroll too. At least I think so. So think about it like this. You get a release of the Epstein files, and yes, there's a lot of bad stuff in there that does incriminate the Jews, but also think about this. They're not even really trying to hide it that hard. It's really only the people like Nick and to a certain degree us that pay attention to stuff that even notice, but you release it with all this sensational stuff about eating babies alive with their poop and stuff in there as well, and then get your CIA assets, Tucker and Candace, deflecting and making it so, it's these Turks, it's these Khazarian Turks or whatever, and it's about like demonic possession and blood jacuzzis.
The thing is with Candace, I think we talked about this a little bit in the green room, but I'll make the point here too, which is like, what separates Candace Owens from Dave Smith? Like how different really are they in terms of where they are on this issue particularly, right? And so when you're looking at it, what's the number one beef? What she's literally actively, we'll watch the clip too, but she actively tried to play the race card on Ben Shapiro. And this was a clip that Nick had reacted to, which we will get into a little bit. But it's on these elements with Israel, right? Which that's where the ball stops with her as well. The ball stops with Israel, right? Now she's less inclined to push the envelope on the fact that there's a pattern of behavior that's attached to an ethnicity. And that's the same place that Tucker stops, the same place that Dave Smith stops, and many others, right? You even get, what's his name? Jeffrey Sachs will go up and down about, Israel and all the actions and how evil they are and all the people in the government are evil, but it has nothing to do with Jewish people. And they'll omit all the elements that go back and forth across the pond between the Jewish element that's here, the Jewish citizens are here, who actively, number one operating principle is what happens to Israel. And it misses the point. Like it broadly misses the point. And it's not just even on the Israel issue. Race realism affects people categorically across the board. And so, when you kind of look at this framing, it's like, what is Candace offer? Like if you remove the Daily Wire attention and like she didn't have the beef between Ben Shapiro and all them and the Crisis King stuff, what would, obviously she's Catholic, but what would separate her from Dave Smith on this issue, right? Like I can't think of anything.
Yeah, and that's one of the things where it's like I guess Candace was so, even though she is a race hustler to a certain extent, it almost sounds like she's just been completely captured by this generic Republican way of thinking, where it's like, let's just all be individuals. You know what I mean? It all comes down to, she's basically Tucker Carlson in that sense, where he's like, one day, because of how things are going, there will be a white identity candidate. And I say, screw that guy. Why? That's what they both are, essentially.
Well, it makes you think, right? Which is, there seems to be a concerted effort across the board to continually put downward pressure on people who are trying to get closer to white identity politics. And that's the one thing where the moment I see anybody push against that, pushing for more pro-white identity, media is a red flag to me. And so, and just thinking about that too, just in the sense on Candace on this issue, that to me, I don't know if it's an argument for containment, but I would just say it doesn't make her any better than Dave Smith. And so she stops too short of the actual goalpost we need to be aiming for. One other thing I thought was funny, which we won't spend too much time on it, was because some of the photos that came out from Epstein was showing him like in a bit more of his personal life, there was a little bit of an argument talking about how who takes care of their dog better, Jeffrey Epstein or Hassan Piker. And I thought it was funny because a lot of these photos came out of Epstein like petting his dogs and, playing with his dogs. And people kept contrasting that with Hassan with his dog. And it was like, are we really going after the wrong guy? Who's the real victim here? I thought that was pretty funny. But again, I think even inside of that, people couldn't handle the joke, which seems to be a running theme of politics, which is people are now picking and choosing when you can actually make jokes. We can make jokes about this, but not about this. You can it's cool when I make the joke about it, but not when you make the joke about it. Seems to be a lot more encroaching on those kind of territories, which is kind of where the beef with Jake Shields was at. But I'll let you kind of give your thoughts where you were at with like the Jake Shields kind of back and forth.
I'll get into that in a second. I wanted to say, because you and me met last year, Atlas. So we actually didn't know each other during the Biden era. And I don't know if you felt this way, but like, to me, people take politics so seriously. And of course it's a serious matter, duh. But like, there's like no room for nuance, no room for jokes. So like, I loved Joe Biden in like a entertainment in the same way Trump is funny. Joe Biden was funny too. Like his whole, I remember when he first became president, someone was asking him, he was driving a car and some reporter asked him something about Israel. She's like, what do you get up, blah, 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 Israel? And he goes, why don't you get in front of the car and I'll tell you? Like, that's funny. Like, eat the chocolate chip, dude. And like and I said that, like, it's no secret. I work on a radio show and I said that. I was like, yeah, I think Biden's a terrible president. He's one of the worst presidents we've had in a long time, but I like him. He's cool. He's funny. Like, I get why they picked him for president, and people are like, whoa, you like him? What's wrong with you?
Well,
like,
that's kind of the same elements here, right? Which is like, people are building sacred cows that like they're just you're just wasting your time. But with the Biden thing, I can't think of anything like that I was like, oh, that's funny. But the last thing, it was kind of like at the very end, the very tail end of his presidency, which was when it was like the meme was coming out about Donald Trump won by one vote. Like, who was it? And it's the clip of Biden like looking over to the camera and he smiles, and then it cuts to the music. That one was like maybe the greatest meme of the last like 2 years. I love that. I love that meme. I've probably seen it like 40 times.
I don't know how this one slipped under the radar when it happened, and I've only seen it recently because of the Epstein file dump. There was a clip of Biden when he was president, and Netanyahu came to visit him, and they were in the Oval Office, and Netanyahu was talking. He was like, me and Joe Biden, we have been friends for 40 years. And then you see Biden, he just goes like he signs the cross on his chest. That's funny, dude. He's like, cool, bro.
Because he's so old. He's like, he's behaving normal. He's just behaving without the performative nature. And I think you were getting a good bit of that. Like what you had mentioned with the car. Yeah. I didn't remember that. But when you said it, I was like, I do remember that happening. He was reverting back to his old, like, 1995 GI crime bill Biden.
F these people. I remember when he was like doing so poorly at the Trump versus him debate. Like all the memes that were like, it was like Joe Biden said, it was like, it's Jover. That was so funny, dude.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing with it too, which is like, as funny as that stuff is, and it's like the low hanging fruit, you're getting more of that kind of low energy Jeb Bush push from all of the plan trusters. And I think that's like what probably is angering me the most. Just looking through the timeline, I know we're like, this is kind of a harder segue, but a lot of those people who would kind of push all of like the stuff with Trump, like, isn't that so based? Trump said this, like, this little quip or whatever, are the same people who are pushing like right now, John Doyle is on like a day 7 of 28 of like why Black History Month isn't real. And you also have other people like Captain Dreamer and others who are pushing this stuff, screaming at everybody. But then he talks about how he's like going to Italy and we're all Christo-fascists. And they kind of like, they show themselves. And there is this big element where there are so many people inside of these groups that are just, you cannot trust them. It's so hard to trust these people. And you get all this outrage from them, but their number one thing is, there's nothing more based than voting Republican. And I could not believe myself when I heard John Doyle say that out loud. But he believes it, at least so much as it will make him money on YouTube. But I guess...
Well, he's always been a dork.
Yeah.
I mean, is anyone surprised by this?
Well, I guess one of the first things I would want to move to on the America First end is because of all of this Epstein stuff and resetting everything, going back about Nick, this is the Groyper report, is the fact that people have been, what's the right way to say this? They have been hot and bothered since he has been selling this quarter zip. And it's by continually like more and more people are just like, they're screaming at the top of their lungs, right? They're just screaming how like it's the worst thing ever. And we talked how in the green room, it's coming from all these people who are posting like all these Hitler edits, but you sell a quarter zip that says USA on it because it's got a loose reference to Epstein. Now the world's burning down, and like now the people are like actively talking about wanting to go harm Nick over this too, which is like, talk about like left-wing progressive like loser energy. It's like that's that when you're screaming about wanting to go kill somebody, like that's insane. So let's let that kind of slide away. But in there, Ryan Dawson took a direct aim at Nick, and the post went viral. The only issue was the majority, if not all, the images that he attached to attack Nick were AI generated or AI manipulated. So it was later on community noted, but Nick did address this. Now I would play the opening one, but the images are a bit graphic, and I'm going to save everybody from that because it does depict And again, you got to think how sick somebody is to make an AI generated image. And what it was, the base of this image was actually from a case from the 1980s that was popular, which did have a photo of the victim get sent to the parents, like to continue to further torture them. And, it's from I think the guy's name was Johnny or something, but they used that photo and they edited it over and over again to make it look like instead of a man without a shirt on, it was a young girl who was trapped, kidnapped, and duct taped. And, I don't know if it was gagged, but they were blindfolded, I think. So what I will play is the second one because there was more people pushing this. So just know that there were people who were actively using AI images to try to defame Nick and to a serious degree. And seeing it from Ryan Dawson, I think, kind of exposes a bit of this kind of envy and jealousy that exists towards Nick in the space. Let's just be honest about it. There are people who will fight tooth and nail no matter how much they agree with Nick. They refuse to let him be the leader of the movement. And I would say that's a lot of where you get a lot of these tensions are. And so what I will play is, since I described the above video, but I will play the second one, just so you can see some of the materials that were being shared and some of the directions it was going. But here's that clip here.
One. This is one you've seen floating around. This is Ryan Dawson. He says, she's 18, quote, Nick Fuentes. And then he shows this picture. Now, this is just a picture of Jeff Epstein with a little girl in his lap and a guy. Well, what's the implication to the 2.3 million people that saw it, 53,000 likes? Well, the implication is that this is a little child who is a rape victim. My claim is that the victims are age 14 to 17. That is what Epstein was into. That's not technically pedophilia. It is, strictly speaking, a different category. He goes, oh, well, Nick says she's legal. Here's a picture of Epstein with clearly a prepubescent girl. Well, it would help to know who this guy is. Do you know who this person is? You might say, oh, he's one of Epstein's clients This man's name is Glenn Dubin. Okay, same guy. See this guy in the background? Same guy. That is his daughter. That is Jeffrey Epstein's goddaughter. Jeffrey Epstein used to date this guy's wife. They're close friends. They do business together. This girl is this guy's daughter. She is Epstein's goddaughter. And here it is on Wikipedia. Okay? He was friends with Epstein. That was his goddaughter. So what do you think is happening here? Epstein certainly is a sex criminal, belongs in jail, belongs in hell. But is every photo of him with a girl necessarily mean he's involved in sex in that photo? No, I don't think so. He's still a person with friends that have families. This is not evidence of anything. The only thing this is evidence of is that he spent an afternoon with his friend and his goddaughter. Okay? That's what is happening in this photo. But of course, the insinuation, oh, well, she's a rape victim. She's clearly not 18. You're making fake. And you've seen this everywhere. You've seen all of this stuff everywhere. This is all fake. The ball thing, fake. That picture of the tied up girl, demonstrably fake. It's AI edited. The magnifying glass hoax, it's a porn video. This is his goddaughter. He's with family. He's with a friend and a family friend.
So I'm just going to go straight to you, Josh. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was because I'll be honest, I did you look before I get into it, did you actually look up any of the files? Did you delve into that yourself at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
a little bit. Okay, because I hadn't really. I looked up my name, of course. The name Josh came up a lot, but not. There's no record of me there.
No,
hey man,
I didn't do that.
I told you I was on the island in 21.
All right, guys, I'm just gonna make Star Wars videos. I'm out.
but my take on that was this is exactly to the point. Is okay, is Ball in the thing? Sure. Oh wait, he's not. It matters what the truth is. Like it does matter because credibility is key. Nick said this earlier in the week. Conspiracy theory used to be a pejorative. Now it isn't, but it almost is becoming one again, because what is popular in the conspiracy world now is basically sensationalism. And it goes to show with this kind of stuff is like, let's be honest about the situation. No one in this denies this was a blackmail operation, but the sensationalism of the nature of the blackmail is what people care about. And like Nick said, this is very slimy of Ryan Dawson it goes to show how Jewish even we are, where it's like Ryan Dawson the people on our side, a Ryan Dawson type, he's implying that Nick is covering up Epstein's pedophilia because there's a little girl in his lap. But as Nick lays out, that's not the case. This is his goddaughter.
Well, that's what I was saying. How insane would it be if somebody took a photo of me with my daughter and then redacted her face and then tried to claim I was a pedophile? Like, I mean, I don't know about you, but that would be something where I would travel across state lines and let me save it because we're on YouTube. But that's what I don't like. I don't like that people are sitting here saying they don't need context. You're just like, then you're no different than a left winger or somebody who doesn't need evidence. Like, the truth does matter. And the first thing I thought when I was listening to this conversation, I thought about the guy in the Ahmaud Arbery case. He was spending life in prison for recording it. But the way that most people covered that case, they don't know that all he did was record it with his phone. But because people didn't need to care about what the truth was or the finer details, a guy is spending a life in prison for recording an incident, for recording guys trying to defend their neighborhood. And that's insane to me. And that was kind of his pushback to Sneeko as well, too, because Sneeko was saying, because Sneeko agreed. I don't think most people know this, but Sneeko actually agreed with Nick's take overall. But Sneeko's argument was he was saying it's still overall bad optics, but it's like it doesn't matter what the optics are. It matters we're dealing with what's real and what's not real. And so you have all these very principled people all of a sudden coming entirely unglued from their principles because they have a hunch or a belief. And I find that to be insane, given the fact and the nature of the way that the Epstein files have been treated. I mean, literally a year and a half ago, most people were kind of giving up on even getting the Epstein files, saying we'll never see them. We'll never know the truth. You'll never know what was doctored, what's not doctored, and everyone goes, you can't trust the Congress. You can't trust the government. But now everybody's completely trusting everything that's on the emails. There's no principle. There's no operating principle here. It's a lot of people who are just wanting to go and believe what they want to believe, and a lot of confirmation bias happening. Forgive me. That's what I see a lot of.
And I want to get your take on that because, let's play this out. What does Ryan Dawson think Nick is up to? Does he think Nick is because that's exactly what it is. I mean, let's be honest. Ryan Dawson is upset that Ryan Dawson's whole thing is he's the Jew guy in his own mind, and Nick Fuentes is actually the Jew guy. He is actually the truth teller and the number one name in anti-Semitism. I know I'm being flippant here, but that's just what it is. Well, and so what does he think Nick is doing? He thinks Nick is defending Epstein by belittling the pedophilia, but coming out and talking about how this is all about Jewish identity. What conclusion is he drawing?
Well, that's the thing is Ryan Dawson's also been very particularly I don't think he thinks he's the Jew guy. I think he just hates Nick, and for probably a lot more personal reasons than professional reasons. But Ryan Dawson's operating principle about this has never been the white identity, the Christian identity, not any of that. For Ryan Dawson, it's always been, he's more so on the left wing side of things, where he doesn't like that there's a genocide happening, and he finds that to be despicable. He more so is always engaged with the Israel question and the Jewish question and all of the subversion in the state of Israel from the view, and more so closer to Hassan Piker would, which is there's a real history here. It's all, you're being lied to. And his biggest thing is he doesn't like that Palestinians and kids or women and children are being blown up, which isn't to say it's a bad thing, but they approach it from two different elements. They have two different main reasons and motives for why they cover this story and why it's important to them. But I mean, what does that do to Ryan Dawson's credibility that he posted 5 or was it 4 AI generated images to attack Nick? What does that do for Ryan Dawson? Do you think that makes people find Ryan Dawson more believable, or does this more look so like a vendetta? And the thing is, too, is Ian Carroll even called out Ryan Dawson on one of the photos. So one of the photos is like, it's not even Epstein. It changes the face of Epstein to like some random, like weird looking Neanderthal. But again, it's because people just want to believe what they already believed beforehand. It's an easy trap to fall into, confirmation bias, which is, because you believed it, you have faith in it being the thing.
Take
You're going to push for it regardless.
Family,
I do apologize. There was a super chat. I think it was from the
home.
NAV creator channel. But yeah, super chats are live again. And thank you for the super chats. We appreciate it. Everybody who's become a member so far. Thank you very much. We're getting all the returning members. And
it's kind of funny.
Spirit show of the week. Go ahead.
Let's go, dude. It's the best show of the week. Let's be honest. Besides offensively accurate and the Joshua Vandernoot show from months and months and months ago.
Agreed.
But it is kind of funny thinking about that. What you just said, Atlas, you talked about people have their confirmation bias, which basically implies that there are people out there right now disappointed that it's not pedophilia. That, oh, damn it, 9-year-old girls weren't raped on the island.
Well, that part to me is like, I'm mind blown by this, right? Because for me, one of the biggest things that broke me open into the red pill in terms of like Christianity versus Judaism was coming to the understanding that every other Christian father pre the 1900s were objectively anti-Semites. And so you're approached with this like either we're the only generation that's right and we need to condemn every single generation of church father that came before us, or they were right and we're wrong. And I think we all know the answer to that question. The same way I look at this issue in this instance, and I'm like, so you're going to condemn all the previous generations that operated in this principle? We're condemning like literal scripture in the Bible that talks about the coming of age of women. Like that to me is like, that's insane. Like, again, we're just jumping around from principle to principle. Where your principles come from? Mine comes from the Bible, dude. I just go to that, I look at it, it's all I need. And I'm able to look at things in perspective and in the historical element that they were. And Nick has said it 100 times now too, that what Epstein did in terms of grooming vulnerable girls is still despicable. It is still evil, but that's not good enough. They want to be correct and they want to call it all pedophilia. And he's just making the small nuance here, which is like, there's a big distinction between, actively targeting like under 10-year-olds versus like 16, 17-year-olds. And especially when you do look at the majority of what was present in the Epstein files, it was more of the latter than it was of the former. If anything, there's very little evidence of the former. Not to say that it didn't happen, but it is to say, if we're looking at it objectively, which I don't think anybody really is, he's right. I just find myself once again going like, I don't understand what the issue is. Like, how do you get so emotionally upset by that? Like, that's what I don't understand, I guess. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things where it's like people that believe in the 9/11 conspiracy theory that find out hologram technology and Project Bluebeam, like it's not real. It's like, okay, but Benjamin Netanyahu still crashed planes into the Twin Towers. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things you talked about, like having faith. Where are we getting our morality from, if not the Bible? You think what do you know more than God? And that's another thing. Like when I was in my apologetic phase, I was bending myself over backwards to try and find out how, oh no, the Bible's take on slavery is actually like, oh no, it condemns it. And then I was like, wait a minute. If the Bible says, okay, you can have slaves, just don't be mean to them, maybe that's what is good.
Well, that's kind of like where I fall back on, which is like, if you think this is a terrible take, well then like take that up with your Bible. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. If you have to be that physically removed from understanding like how people used to, like understanding the institution of marriage, where it came from, how it's housed, how it happened, and what the Lord said about it and many of the other prophets, I'm not going to do that work for you. I'm not going to hold your hand, and I don't care. Your moral outrage means nothing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm in the business of being right and being truthful and caring about it being very strictly Christian, very specifically. Mm-hmm. The only reason that it's bad optics is because the majority of people are retarded. Now, I will give that element, right? Which is, it is, when you have a lot of retards in the system, you do ultimately have to have that in the back of your head. When you're operating, when you're making business, when you're marketing, you have to always remember that the average person has got 2 brain cells to rub together. And that has to go into like your strategy. They're probably, given the way that it's kind of blown up since, maybe I would say, ultimately, maybe it was. Maybe strategically, this was worse off, given how people have been overreactive. But at the same time, I think for those who are in the audience who watch his show day in and day out, they understood it just fine. And they didn't really have any kind of general reaction to it. And I've not seen any kind of Groyper generals coming out and being like, whoa, I heavily disagree with Nick on this. Not seeing it at all. And again, a lot of people react to clips, not the entire show.
And let's be honest, the kind of stuff that Nick talks about in regards to the Epstein files, the shady business connections between Larry Ellison and you know, these basically media monopolies and stuff like that, it's not entertaining. That's what it is, Atlas, is people want to be entertained. I love listening to, you know, like cryptid videos and like, oh, it did Bigfoot or whatever, you know, ghost stories, you know, which is, let's be honest, that's what people want out of this. They want there to be some sort of satanic altar where they have a statue to Baal in the basement, because that would be otherworldly. That would be sensational and exciting. Not like, oh, they work together to promote certain people and businesses so that they can have a foothold on politics, and it's just kind of handshake deals and whatnot. It's not as fun. And that's what it is. Let's be honest. That's what it is with politics. Politics has just become the new football. It's become the new sport.
There is a lot of elements like that. And we kind of saw it coming. The writing was on the wall when the slogan got popularized that politics has become pop culture. And given the fact that I think the majority of people were forced during COVID to pay attention to the news they otherwise wouldn't have cared about, they started paying attention and seeing things that they were like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then you have like this kind of mass coming to the sides and factions, coming to the table, coming to the conversation for the first time. But the whole thing, and instead of us, I guess, going at it, there's a great clip I wanted to play anyways on this. It'll probably be the last thing we have for Monday. But this is Nick responding to Jake Shields, because Jake Shields was kind of leading this big push against Nick about how, like, I like you, Nick, but I heavily disagree with all of this. Well, Jake went a little bit further than that. We'll go ahead and play it. We're not going to play the full clip, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, we all know the quote about give them bread and circuses. Well, bread and circuses used to be like sports movies and entertainment, but people always had in the back of their mind when stuff like that actually mattered happened, oh man, politics. But dude, it's almost like genius. They've made politics into its own bread and circus, while the real politics is happening underneath. So the dummies, they get the like, oh, I'm delving into the reading. I'm doing stuff that matters, when really it's just the circus.
Well, and one thing I'll add too, before we go to the clip, but make it short, is because a lot of people are in the business of narrative curating or narrative building. And so when your entire the entire way that you engage with the news in general is to parrot an agenda, or to ensure that you are containing people or keeping them, you know, corralled or pushing them in a certain direction. What came out in the Epstein files was very, you know, narrative disrupting, because it touched immediately and directly upon things like race realism, and there being very specific patterns of behavior in very distinct ethnicities. But for many people in the conservative space, they're still terrified of approaching that territory. They refuse to, right? It's kind of like, you know, name the Jew, if you will. But for people like myself who engage with things as they happen, and I have no agenda to give beyond like Christ is king and say it or get out, it's very easy for me to go like, oh, and look, and here's actual direct evidence of what we've seen and historically has been documented throughout history. But when everyone else is going, it's just Israel, it's these bad people in government, it's like it's not there, right? There's not much there that speaks to that. And so they got to like either omit it, avoid it, or like how some of these people are saying, nobody cares about it. And that's how you know somebody's entirely got either something to lose or they're pushing something, because no way in the age of 2026 would you sit there and say the average person doesn't care that they're being ruled by either satanic elite occult members or just straight up pedos. And it's like, there's no world in which people go, I don't care about that. It's just some BS inner circle Trump administration pushing that along. But here's the clip. This is Nick acutely responding to Jake Shields amid the Epstein quarter zip controversy.
Jake, I mean, this guy, how many times are we going to have this public blow up? And every time he apologizes, hey, man, I'm sorry. Hey, man, I shouldn't have said that. Hey, I should have talked to you first. Hey, I didn't see this. You know, but people have this resentment towards me. They don't want to fight me. You know, and then they just accidentally let it slip that they got this big fucking problem with me. I love that. So, whatever, bro. I'm just over it. I'm just so over that. You know, guy that literally worships Hitler. All of them worship Hitler. Hitler's the man. I love Hitler. LOL, the Holocaust. Dude, Hitler was a racial supremacist. They really think that Hitler wanted to create like a wholesome Chungus Democrat socialist country. If Hitler had it his way, they would have killed and enslaved millions of people. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know, they go, Hitler wanted, in their mind, Hitler's like Superman. Like he was an alien that came here to fight for truth, justice, and the American way. He came here to free the Slavs from communism, and he just wanted to destroy pornography. And it's like, no, like he wanted to enslave half of Europe. He wanted to colonize Eastern Europe. He wanted an empire based on racial hierarchy. Hello. He wanted to implement a racial caste system. Jake, your kids aren't even white. In Hitler's Germany, your kids would be second-class citizens. And you want to talk about, well, when you have kids, you'll feel differently. Dude. Like, what do you think Hitler would think about you, bro? And I'm not saying that for any reason other than like, I thought we all understood that we could have this ironic detachment. Like understanding this, we could have a mature view of Hitler and we can sort of have an admiration for how he rebuilt the German state, while also being conscious of the fact that he did commit atrocities, although they were embellished for political purposes. Like I thought we could have a mature understanding. No, they're not capable of this. They're not capable. For them, it's either Hitler was the devil or he's Jesus. For them, it's all or nothing. In their story, no, it's just reversed. Hitler's the good guy, and the world started when I don't even know. Like you ask these people what happened in the 20th century, they would tell you, well, first the Jews got us into World War I, then the Jews got us into World War II. Then they killed Kennedy. Then they did 9/11, and then they killed Charlie Kirk. Like if you asked any of these people, write U.S. history out from start to finish, that's what it would be for them. Couldn't tell you about anything else. So, yeah, it's just getting really irritating. And I'm just about done. I've had it with that. I really, you know, you want to do your podcast and bring the same people on to talk about the, to give the same speech that you've been giving for 3 years, knock yourself the fuck out. You want to do another podcast where you say, Jews are killing kids. It's a genocide in Palestine, blah, blah. Okay, knock yourself out. We've heard it. We've been there, done that. Like I said, same people, same message, same speech. Go right ahead. I'm actually interested in critical thinking and a political movement.
So I'll let you go first, Josh. You are muted, my brother.
My bad. The Jake Shields thing is so funny because he's talking about this and then they immediately kissed and made up anyway. But yeah, it's one of those things where it cannot be understated the novelty of the JQ at this point. Like if you woke up on the JQ 2016, 2018, or even maybe as far back as 21, it was kind of novel. It was kind of like this exceptional thing that was extremely rare. Like you couldn't talk about this with anybody. No. And now it's so mainstream that you're seeing like it's the knee-jerk reaction. It's like when kids have bad experiences at church and then they become like full-blown Christ-hating atheists.
Right.
It's, well, okay, we have this problem with Jewish power in our country, so we worship Hitler now, rather than having an actual nuanced view of everything going on, a nuanced view of Stalin. You know, okay, so we have a problem with capitalism in our country, so now I love Stalin and I love the Soviet Union. It's like, let's just be what we need to be.
Or, you know, it ends up like with me, you know, and I go up against somebody who's, you know, a writer for the American Thinker, and you know, and it turns out that they literally have no idea literally anything at all. No point I could reference they have any idea happened. And this is somebody who's, you know, writing for the American, been writing for politics for quite some time, like literally could not even, had to take time and wasn't able to even interact with any point about the founding of Israel. And so to that point, like, people don't understand history. Like, it's obvious, like that thing that's obviously true. I think when you see a lot of the tactics that people are pushing for, even from the dissident right, it's very clear that they haven't learned from the previous generations of the dissident right, pushing for a lot of the same things. They got people boxed up, put away, and put the dissident right on ice for another 12 years. And, you know, it's like, do we want to really do that again? With all the momentum that we have, or you want to fumble it, you want to do something rash, not think, you want to let it fall back into the wayside, you know. And you think about it too, like, this is probably the closest we've come to really cementing ourselves as like a mainstream element and not being put back in the box. And I just can't think of risking all of that simply because so many people cannot, you know, contain their emotions or maintaining a level of self-control. And from this, I'm going to address the super chat here too from GeoGasser. I appreciate the super chat. But he says, really, doesn't your littlest one as a Nazi shake you to your core? Doesn't dismembered babies want you to take matters into your own hands? And what I would say is this, you know, I feel like a lot of people have learned nothing from the Me Too movement. Just because somebody says something happened to them, I'm not going to immediately rush to their defense and say, yeah, I believe every word that you said. Granted, the emails are a bit more in person and circumstantial than what, you know, somebody saying something happened was. But at the same time, you sit here and you go, like, again, the dismembered baby is specifically is coming from a very exacerbated account that's from it's a tip given into the FBI, right? So this is anybody could be saying this, right? You know, I could have called the FBI in 2019 and said the most insane, ridiculous things happened, and I saw George Bush out in my lawn here in Ohio doing unspeakable things with his behind, and that would be in the Epstein files. Does that make it true? No, it doesn't. It just means it's another piece of evidence that needs to be engaged with, not that it needs to be taken as God's given truth. And the fact that so many people are losing sight of the fact that, like, we don't really know who really honestly is in full control of the Epstein files. I just like the chain of custody element. The reality is more than likely the actual full, robust, comprehensive grouping of the files is probably held by somebody in Israel, not even here in America, like the full scale of it. To me, it's just like, when I see something like this, it's like, I would really hope you don't end up on my jury. Just if you hear somebody say he did this thing to me, and if you're going to believe that, I think that's an insane, to me, that's insane. I find that to be insane, but I'm curious your thoughts, Josh.
Yeah, it's womanish. I mean, you said it. It's the Me Too movement exactly. It's like, oh, what if it were your sister who wanted to be a movie star and Harvey Weinstein had a little bit of quid pro quo with her? You know what I mean? It's like, let's just be real about it. They released 3 million files, and they say there's as much as 6 million. Just statistically, not all of it can be like completely relevant, accurate, or true. Like, he operated from the 90s to the, like to 2018 at best or worst. 6 million pages of what exactly? How much blackmail did they have on these people? You know what I mean? It's a lot to go through, and it is essentially like, whataboutism at that point. I mean, let's just grow up a little bit.
And I think it's a great point. I appreciate it from Liquefier. They dismember thousands of babies at the abortion clinics daily. But all of a sudden, the performative outrage comes to the Epstein files. It's like, that's what I mean with like the whole, I bring up the Walmart thing all the time. Not to cut you off, Josh. This is what I mean when, like, I get tired of seeing the keyboard warriors, and I'm not even trying to be rude. This is how I feel, honestly. It really pisses me off to see that. And then I go in and day out, and like, I actively try to reach out to brothers to get them more fit, more healthy, some of the guys around me, and I can't even get them to get up out of the Walmart e-scooter to help themselves. And it's like, at a certain point, it's just like, it means nothing. I don't see anybody even will, like, I would halfway want to be side by side, you know, in a fight, unless their name's Zeb Boykin. I'll take Zeb on my left and Josh on my right. But beyond that, it's like, what force are we doing this with? What is the organizing principle here? What way do you do and organize this? And the thing is too, like the abortion clinics, that needs to be tackled first. That's like objectively more children are being harmed per day at the abortion clinics than what's occurring in the Epstein files. But that's an issue we're going to willingly compromise on if we push for people like JD Vance and others. It's like, it just makes you want to say F it, because again, like I said at the beginning, what's the principle? What's the number one motivation here? It's like, I hate abortion just as much as the next guy. But understanding that, like, if I go in there like a left winger would and start firebombing the place, they're going to use that. The media will exacerbate it, and then it makes it worse for everybody else who's on my side. I guess, I don't know. Maybe we're losing ability to reason. We're walking away from rationality. But just seeing a lot of the takes and the way people have reacted overall, just like, it's been very disheartening.
And that's exactly, so like GeoGasser, you said, like, doesn't this make you want to take up arms against who? Donald Trump, Netanyahu, the military? All right, I'll do it after you. You know what I mean? Like, or we could have a conversation about what to go from here. Because let's be honest. I don't know about you, Atlas, but to me, it was kind of like, we already knew about the Epstein connection to Mossad. We already know, like, for anyone willing to pay attention, the writing is on the wall with Epstein. Right. Let's be like, from what we've seen so far, it really doesn't add any new information, but rather is just like a little bit of garnish on what was already known and a little bit more weight behind the arguments. To me, it was like, Donald Trump said we were going to release the Epstein files, and then he was pushing so hard not to, which made me go, oh, damn, what's really in there? You know what I mean?
Right.
And then it comes out and it's like, well, it is kind of what we expected in the first place, or at least what I expected. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, what really the main story is, as Nick points out, is Jewish power, which this is just sort of like a little bit of proof to that. But as we've talked about, what is being promoted? It's eating babies. It's having sex with 9-year-olds. It's sensational stuff that ultimately is kind of unknowable.
Take your Israeli family.
If there's videos,
go
that's one
home.
thing, but this is like, like you said, it's someone submitting a tip to the FBI. And think about, I don't even know when that tip was submitted, but like, to me, anything that is a quote unquote tip from after Epstein was arrested, after he was killed, especially, I'd be hard pressed to take any of that at their word.
Right. Well, and I think you kind of nailed on something even earlier. Like, who do you take up arms against, right? Like, we haven't even defeated the ideological battles we need to win yet. Like, I'm not about to take over the country and then reset it back and then have a bunch of, you know, I'm getting real close to cursing a lot, and probably just because it's just, I'm so tired of dealing with stuff like this. But just the general nature of that, like, and then what, we're going to be ruled by a bunch of wife guys, you know, like, and like, that's who like now we're giving it over to. Now we have to just fight another battle. And so there's certain cultural and very ideological wins that need to occur. Like, we're not even anywhere close to where we need to be, even in again, kind of unifying principle. Even in the dissident right at large, you still have massive infighting between people who are white above Christianity, and then you have those who are Christianity above white. And like, we still haven't solved those kind of beefs. We still have people actively fighting day in and day out because they are unwilling to be. And I think me and Josh would agree. I'm sure people would disagree, but I think it's very objective. Nick is clearly the leader of the dissident right at this point. He is the number one influencer coming out of this space, and people refuse to go under the banner. They don't want to, for whatever reason, whether it's personal dispute or they just disagree generally. Who else is going to garner the banner right now? Who else is going to rally the charge? Where else do we go to that doesn't actively push and take away from the movement as it is? But another super chat there from Joe Gasser. I'll address this before we go to the next clip. He says, what about this? What about that? He says, can a person be against both? Or in order to eradicate abortion clinics, we have to support Epstein. And again, like, I don't understand what this is getting at. The point being is, you are actively have a lot of performative outrage right now about the Epstein files, But I'm arguing to you objectively, more children per day right now in a place that you can find in Google on your phone right now is doing that to children, and you're here in chat right now talking to me about everyone else should be more angry about this thing that we don't even really know if it's for sure or not. Like that, to me, that is the definition of performative outrage. And it's not even to be harsh, it's to say, like, I'm telling you, if we continually push for the violent routes, given the fact that the Palantir is getting the contracts that they are, given the fact that we know the surveillance network is being installed the way it is, you can say and kiss goodbye to any real chance of actually pushing away and moving out of here. We already have classifications of NVEs, right? Which is it's nihilistic violent extremist. And they went very broad in this classification because they wanted to be able to put in anybody who would fall under the tag of revolutionary, whether they were left wing or right wing. And they would probably throw in a lot of people who use the terminology like black pilled. I'm black pilled, and then talking about revolution, you would fall under a nihilistic violent extremist. I am being surgical very specifically because I do not want to lose the momentum and lose the direction that we have built and the energy that we have accumulated. This is the farthest I think the American right has made it in the last 50, 60, 70 years. And I will be damned to lose it because we cannot have a little bit of self-control and engage with things in a much more rational and like I said, surgical manner. And,
right. This is like this whole argument, this whole conflict that we have going on. It's not a game of tug of war. It's this delicate, like, wipeout balancing act where, think about it. Like, my mom knows who Nick Fuentes is now. I've known about Nick for years. Like, like, my grandma knows who he is. But why is that? Is that because Nick is so smart and so popular and charismatic that he just broke through the mold? No. It's because of October 7th. It's because the Jews became very insecure and overreacted. They overplayed their hand, and they basically showed their dark face. And people like Nick, who have been criticizing that and Jewish power for years, were elevated because of that realization. Now, this is to say that I think Nick is very popular, and I agree with what you said, Atlas, where he's basically the leader of the dissident right at this point. But I don't think he would be as popular today if not for October 7th. So think about what that implies. That implies that if October 7th didn't happen, that less people would be as awake on the JQ as they are now. But that would not take away from the reality that Jews have and do have disproportionate power in our country. And that's to say that this is how important it is, where you're getting these vast amounts of people that are coming to the JQ because of sensationalism, because of videos coming out of Gaza of people getting exploded and set on fire. You know what I mean? Right. And this is exactly that. Like, and that's a good thing and all. It's good that people are waking up on it, but they're not waking up because they delved into the research, because they realized these things, because they investigated these shady connections and under the table business dealings. It's because they saw videos of people being blown up. It's because they read a report about George Bush Sr. eating a baby or something like that. You know, we need to keep our eye on the ball, not the game. And if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And to that point, I thought this is a really good thing that Nick had brought up, because he did try to both squash the beef with Ian and Candace. And when he was saying that, he was like, you know, when Candace's credibility, as it has been for the last couple of weeks, go on, now that we're talking about, what was it, like Sumerian technology, time traveling, stargazing, flickering lights.
Technology.
Yeah, I mean, it's like she's just describing a Stranger Things episode at this point. And like that, that's what actually hurts us too. And it's the same argument that Nick has made and many others before, which is when we're talking about the JQ and that being that is what we want the most, like to decouple Israel and this Jewish element to get America's interest back in its own hands, away from the Jewish question, right? Away from the Jewish element, and getting that out into the light, because the best sanitation is sunlight. But what ends up happening is with Candace pushing all what she's doing, making it very easy, very vulnerable, very easy for people to smear her, go at her, whether it's Frank McCormick or the Krasensteins or whatever, it makes the entire movement look bad. This is the same kind of the way that he attacks Ian Carroll, which is if you have the JQ smack between flat Earth and the moon landing is fake, people are going to look at the JQ in the same light as that, which is It's another bottom shelf sci-fi, like loose conspiracy fiction type thing. And that's where we don't want the issue to be treated like that. We want it to be treated as the very real and objective thing that it is, which is why I, and like many others in the Groyper space seems to be very coherent on this, is being very surgical about what is actually objectively true from the files. So again, when you jump on these things and you make these outrageous claims and such, I don't really care about defamation, but it is to say you don't want to massively boost all your liability. It's not to say that there's not criminal things. It's not to say there's not evil things in the files. It's to say there's no urgency here, right? There's no real speed at which we need to engage with this. So why don't we engage with it truthfully, honestly, and let the chips fall where they may as we explore and understand what is real, what we can corroborate, and move from there. This is kind of the whole base premise of like lurking more, which is to not immediately jump at something the moment you saw it. It is to make sure that you have acquiesced yourself enough with the subject that you have a true understanding of it, both front and back, both positive and negative. Not that you just have seen the one side of it and now then you're going to get blindsided later on, by some other, unfortunate information. And the sad thing is like, and this is like, I highly doubt it.
Cortisol spike.
Right. It's sad to me. Like I'm not, and the thing is too, like I'm like trying to very specifically like be kind because I know GeoGaster super chats all the time, but this is pathetic. This is a pathetic way to engage with debate. And you can continue. You don't have to super chat anytime he wants to chat. But like, you're not going to go shut down a clinic. You're not going to go do that. You're not going to go harm other people. And so like, what was the point of even saying that? That to me is like, what did you gain? What did you get? I get we're all frustrated. Nobody wants to be ruled by a bunch of effing Jews. I'm right there with you. My only point is to say I refuse to walk away from the biblical principles of Christianity to then go and presume and assume all these other things simply because another influencer said it and I can't myself corroborate these things. But that's somehow a stretch. And so I guess I'm just like, my hands are up with it. But anything else you want to say before we go to the next clip?
Yeah, I mean, this is what's so frustrating about our side is it seems like everyone on our side wants to lose. Like they've basically already accepted defeat because this is what we get. It's just like oh, you don't do this, but you don't do it. None of you are doing anything. You're not gonna bomb a Planned Parenthood. You're not gonna do political assassinations, which you shouldn't do anyway.
Bro, we can't even get the majority of guys to stop taking their signals and cues from their wives. We're gonna really reinstall the Fourth Reich. Like that's what I mean. Like that's what bothers me, dude. I can't even get men to respect themselves. Well, what do you mean we're gonna take the country back?
Yeah.
Like that to me is like we are too many steps away from there. It's not to say we can't get there. It's to say, let's get to step 4 and 5 if we start talking about 8 and 9.
Well, yeah. And it's like, okay, what's the implication here? The other super chat. What about his original super chat where doesn't seeing a baby get disemboweled like make you want to take matters into your own hands? That's great to say and everything, but like, what are we going to do? I mean, first off, do you think Atlas and I and Nick, by extension, are really belittling that? That's not what we're saying at all. We're saying we're skeptical if that's a real thing.
Right.
So engage with us on that talking point. Be like, oh, you guys you just hand wave it away. Again, like didn't listen to what we said.
Well, listen, to be fair, this is kind of the infighting we need to be pushing against. And like, it's not to sit here and like, we need to argue and beat each other down, browbeat each other down. Back to the point, because this is really the bigger point here, which is this is part of what Project Esther is. This is part of what their number one foundational program is to what they want to do to combat anti-Semitism. They want us to be fighting each other. Every time we disagree, the Goyim fight, the Jew laughs, the Jew wins. This is kind of using Bryce Mitchell's example with gooning. Every time you beat it and jack it, the Jew wins. And so this is how you need to be engaging with these things. And so, to be fair to GeoGaster, like I will say this: we appreciate all the super chats in here. Wish we could disagree a bit more rationally on these types of things.
Take your Israeli family,
but we do need to be moving away from the infighting, right? All this this bickering over like the smallest points. It's like really, it's like, are you going to go like you're going to go listen to like what Matt Walsh now? Now you're on Matt Walsh's team? Like no. Like how about we like just reasonably come up with something? And again, the organizing principle. what's a banner that we can all come under and like that be the meaningful one we push for? One more super chat.
And I want, if I could, I know we're it's a Groyper report, and we've watched like 2 Nick clips tonight. We're already over an hour, but I do want to say this is, I appreciate what Nick said about how, like what you just reiterated, when the Goyim fight, a Jew laughs, all that. We need to get along, so to speak, right? All fine and well, but there is an element of, we're not fighting with GeoGasser. And I know I'm picking on him specifically, but it's just what happened. GeoGasser is fighting with us. I think let's be real. That's what happened.
I would say that's subjectively true, but it adds more infighting, right? Like there's no, like, consequentially getting that like little dig in for the win is like that just hurts us. Like that's actually like a net negative, right? Because now it adds more bad blood, and now there's more Goyim mad, more Jews stay winning, right? It's like that's
so let me finish. What my point is it's like what we all need to learn from this is GeoGasser. Just listen to what we're saying. Engage with us on the points we're making. And Atlas and Josh, when we have to deal with someone who's not doing that, maybe we should just ignore them.
Well, to be told, let's let it go on GeoGasser. Well,
I love you, GeoGasser.
Drop it, yeah. Love you, brother. Sorry, we disagree, unfortunately. Elrax with the super chat. Thank you very much, man. He says, coming from the left, it's this purity testing and infighting shit that tore the left apart in the first Trump term and Biden's term too. And it's exactly right. It's going at the coalition. The unfortunate thing is the big tent of conservatism was always going to blow up, though. That's kind of like, it was naturally going to blow up, whether the Jews got involved or not, because you have a bunch of like liberal right-wingers with a bunch of strong Christian conservatives who disagree heavily on the social elements of what policy should be, going into things like, abortion, that being the biggest one, dividing a lot of the people in the right, which is you have a lot of people like Tim Pool, Dave Smith, and other who really are, that's not really their issue. They don't care. I think Tim Pool probably cares. But then there's a lot of people who are saying like, it's either we abolish abortion or like, I'm not voting. And this is kind of like one of these operating principles. But now kind of where we are, we're kind of past that now, I would say. I think the Big Tent's kind of fallen. That also came with Charlie Kirk too. I think it really blew the right open with the coalition here. And it's on those ends that I would say we really need to make sure that we are maintaining some form of a coalition. And I think in Nick's words, he said a coalition where we can have Myron Gaines and a Sneeko, a coalition where we can have a Candace Owens and a Nick Fuentes, right? And I think that's kind of where we need to be. Because as much as we're infighting about and fighting over each other, we still agree on like 90% of everything else. It's more of the very smaller and more minute things that the disagreements are on, and people get very heated about them.
Right.
But I guess moving on to squashing the beef, I think that's probably where we'll take it directly. I think specifically we'll play this one before we move on to Wednesday, because I think Wednesday we'll get into Ian Carroll not wanting to squash the beef. But we'll play this clip. This is Nick addressing Jake Shields and Candace Owens and all of the people he wants to squash beef with.
Me to go in here and revel and, say what people expect me to say. And, I reached out to the people involved and I said, hey, hang in there. God bless you. Here if you need me. And Jake Shields, I saw somebody say, this guy was just saying all these terrible things about you. How can you squash it? I called Jake Shields up today. We talked for 6 minutes. It was over. 6 minutes. He's talking shit all day. I went on a rant about him on the show last night for a half hour. I called him up, 6 minutes, squashed, over. I said, it's a wash. I talk shit about you. You talk shit about me. Let's let it go. And you want to know why? Because he's an honest guy. I'm an honest guy. I know he's got good intentions. I have good intentions. I know that he loves his children. I know that he loves his family. I know that he's passionate about the issue. So am I. And we need to refocus a little bit, because I'm going to tell you something. It's very obvious that the Israel critical movement is beginning to come apart. That much is clear. We owned 2024. We owned 2025. No question. But the Jews are very smart. And they always learn. They always know how to counterattack. And it's debatable how much of this is being planned, how much of this is self-sabotage. But it's very clear that we're not as strong as we were a year ago. There's a lot more division. There's a lot more infighting. It just isn't as coherent as it was maybe 6 months ago. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think there's a lot of factors. But I think it's very important for us to circle the wagons. Very important for us to get back together and consolidate and get it together. And that's why I said over the past few weeks, I've been saying this. This is a year of refinement. And I'm going to be unpopular. I'm going to be attacked. People are going to say that I'm not a purist. People are going to say, like the shit they've said about me with Charlie Kirk or with Epstein or Venezuela. And I'm willing to be that guy because we need to introduce a little bit of restraint. We need to introduce a little bit of discipline. And that goes in many different ways. The infighting, the quickness to attack each other, but even in what we say and whether what we're saying is accurate. We have to introduce a little discipline and get serious. This is a long-term movement. We are here for the long haul. We have introduced the red pill. We won that battle. Okay? The hearts and minds. We've mainstreamed the views. We've shattered the Overton window. We won that battle. But now the goal is to translate that into political and societal success. And that's a much more difficult task. It's sort of, when you're just trying to get the message out there, you're just trying to do it by hook or by crook. Any way that we can get the message out there, you do it. Any spectacle, any attention you can get, any person you can get on their platform, we're pushing it as much as we can. Well, the message is out there. Now it's a different task. Now it's about creating an intellectual foundation. Now it's about creating a commercial foundation, economic foundation, political foundation. Now it's time to take a little inventory of what we got. Who do we got? What are their positions? What are their resources? And we have to start to think of ways that we can actually make a difference in the political system and everything that entails. It's downstream from a lot of different things that you can do. And so that's really where we're at as a movement. We need to mature a little bit. And it's going to be rocky, it's not going to be smooth sailing, but it needs to be done. So I've been trying to introduce a little bit of discipline. I know it's caused a lot of people to question me, and I try my best to reassure them. People say, I'm not so sure about what you're saying, and I try to remind people, hey, we have to lead with the facts. But anyway, those are just some thoughts on everything that's been going on. It's been sort of crazy, this past couple months, we got to be honest. Take your Israeli
That's
family
kind of the
and go
gist
home.
of it. But I'll let you respond first, Josh.
Thank you, Atlas. Yeah, I think this is actually one of the things I like about Nick, and I've always liked about him, is he takes this movement seriously. And I get that there's a lot of infighting to a certain extent about what that exactly means, but I remember people were talking about how Nick seems to have changed. He seems to have cleaned up his message a little bit, and that shows how phony he is. But to me, it shows how he's taking this seriously, because let's be honest, the sort of edgelord stuff, the Hitler stuff, having a nuanced view of Hitler's one thing, but this, I'm going to run on being an abrasive buffoon who just says whatever I want, who says the N-word all the time. That's not something that can really ascend to any place of power. Was Abraham Lincoln even saying that back in the day so flippantly? Everyone says it behind closed doors, let's be honest. But the true statesman, the true leader of a nation, to actually ascend to that level, you're going to get some edgelord YouTuber doing that. It's not realistic. If we want to take this seriously, we have to update with what we've been given, with the times.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the point, right? Which is that seems to be what some people want the most. Their future vision is they just want a world where they can say the hard R all the time and everyone finds it funny. My future is I don't wake up and see stories where another young man has offed himself because ChatGPT told him to, I don't wake up to another story where an e-girl and some other guy, you know, get shackled up, and like that to me is like what I don't want to see. Like my enemies are feminism, my enemies are Christianity subversion. Like it's not like, I get it, it's funny, haha, and like there's truth to it, right? I'm a race realist, talk about it all the time. I'm not going to sit here and be like, and here's my credibility, I talk about this, like F that. I'm not going to be doing it either, and I find it insane that people do it and push it. But that is the point, which is like we want a movement that can transcend, something that can be actually pushed and accepted and held for a long term and actually become the unifying force of what actually the America can get back under in terms of its like its banner and its like its doctrine, its charter. But go ahead.
Absolutely. And before we get to the super chat, I wanted to say a perfect example of exactly what Nick's talking about, exactly what we're talking about, is Casey Putsch. We saw Casey Putsch's video where he's like, we do not want to be overtaken by Indians. We do not want Ohio to become a data center like hellhole.
Yep.
And then he gets on a political campaign and he gets interviewed by a news person, and he's talking a little bit more eloquently. He's not getting as animated. He's not getting as excited. He's playing politics, and people are like, whoa, what happened to him? Did he betray us? What's going on here? It's like, dude, you have to know your audience. If Casey Putsch went on there, looked into the camera and did his, we don't want these fuckers here, you know, like it would scare people off. You have to roll with the punches. You do have to play the game, and it is a game. Right.
And it's exactly the point. Like you would have a cool post you could like on X, but then then Vivek wins. And it's like, what was the point of that, right? What was the strategy there? But to go to the super chat before it disappears on us, Raven says, because the power has been centralized to the federal government, the strategy is to defederalize power to the states. Ask what ought the federal government be allowed to do. No central power, no end fights. And as much as I would agree, I just, again, it's the pragmatic element of how do you get people in the federal government to actively vote for them to have less power, right? It's like the easiest conflict of interest. How do you get someone who just got power to vote for having less of it? And I think, as you can see with Thomas Massie and Matt Gaetz and other individuals like that, their ability to exist in Congress or in those spaces it's short term. And it's, unless you're somebody who is as principled and is willing to take on the fight as Thomas Massie, most people pack in and walk away, as we saw with Marjorie Taylor Greene, as we saw with Matt Gaetz as well. And I think Matt Gaetz specifically was because he knew that story was coming out about the underage girl and the story that had basically been stuck with him since his father about Israel. And I would like that to be the case. The only issue is we're in a battle right now where we can't even get our guys in positions of power. And then at the same time, you have people who are standing right next to you telling you that's definitely our guy, as they're pointing to J.D. Vance, who's married to Usha. And so this develops a very chaotic environment in which you have to be, as Nick says all the time, very specifically precise in terms of how we can actually implement these different elements and items the way we would want to see them, and the way that the left wouldn't come in and immediately wipe them back out when they came into power too. And it's also part of the reason why you want to win the ideological battle. You don't want to still have a system where the left has a good chance to win. You want to beat them so openly and publicly in the market of ideas that they don't have a chance to get back up for a long time. And we're talking like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, if not longer, and if not forever. And that's why I think there is such an element here of this hesitancy from Nick, which I wouldn't even say it's hesitancy. I think it is him wanting to be very specifically like, let's not do anything that would lose the movement. And I think this is part of the reason why he was unwilling to endorse both James Fishback and Casey Putsch, was he didn't want to immediately get to the top apex point of our movement and then throw it all into a race where it might lose. I get that argument with Casey, because the polling data at the time he made that statement had Vivek at around an 88% chance to win, Casey at a 6. So with that being said, there's strategy at play here, and I think that cannot be understated enough. And then I'm glad that Elrac said this too, because I'm getting this all the time now. I think it seems to be the top thing against me is like, I'm like, people say I'm not white, right? And I'm like, if I'm not white, then we're cooked, dude. Like if I don't qualify as white, then we're cooked. Like, and more to the point, which is where the infighting comes from, wanted to be these purists. And I think somebody made comments earlier that the AFPAC got canceled. And it's like, really, like Charlie Kirk got his neck blown in how many months ago? We want to put our guy in a public space that's announced well in advance. Let's in a public venue. It's like, You know, to me, like, I find that to be ridiculous, right? It's like, it's not the political climate to be having an AFPAC. It's going to be over the midterms. We're not close to the election yet. We can have one in 27 if things start dying off. But again, that's what I mean. But like, I guess for me, it's like, I can think about that and I go, oh, they canceled AFPAC. My first reaction isn't like, wow, like what, why? What's the federal agent reason that he did that? I just think I'm like, well, you know, Charlie Kirk did get his neck blown in. I'm like, that makes sense to me. And then you also think, what would be consequential about it? Like if we have an AFPAC, all of a sudden the world is saved. Like Nick had AFPAC, guys. It's like, oh my gosh, you know, and like the rainbows start coming out and the leprechauns start jumping in with their pots of gold. Like I don't get what would be so consequential about it. If anything, you would get another media storm like Charlottesville, and they'd be like, look at this white supremacist rally. Look at all these people. Like what happened to Tyler Russell when he gets doxxed, and not just him, his entire Discord got doxxed. I read like a 51-page article about this guy where it was every single person in his Discord was name, their location, who their parents were, who their sisters were, where they came from, where they worked, and it ruined their lives. You can't take stuff like that back once it's out there. And the same thing with Sarah Stock, although I would have a bit of a different opinion with that. But once these things come out, it ruins people's lives forever, especially on the public stage. So there doesn't need to be like precision. We don't shoot ourselves in the foot for no reason. But anything else you want to add, Josh?
Yeah, on that note, if anyone, on the last thing you said, if anyone wants to get involved in this movement in a political way, but you have a skeleton in your closet, please don't. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like what blackmail do they have on Casey Putsch? If he is as he presents, what I think he is, he's like a normal, nice guy. You know what I mean? That's what can they really post on him? But like, don't be gay, don't be a freak. That's about how do we get so many gays in the conservative side?
Because Charlie Kirk let him in. He opened the door for him, dude. You know, and like, I'm not trying to take shots at Charlie, but like, gosh. He is like,
no, you're right.
He is our
You're
pariah, dude.
Right.
He opened the door for the big tent conservatism. He was the one who was at the front door saying, let's compromise, let's compromise, let's compromise. This isn't to be, you know, this is just objective. This is just, you know, the reality we live in.
Hey, smelly balls in chat. I see you. I love you.
Yeah, what's up, Smelly?
No homo though.
I didn't see him at the beginning. Nice to see you in here there, brother. I guess what's the next thing we're going to move to? This will be Wednesday. You wanted to cover the Ian Carroll bit, right? Ian Carroll and Sneeko? Yeah,
I did. Let's do that.
Because this happened
Ian Carroll.
Happened on Thursday, didn't it? It did. Yeah, so Wednesday there was no America First show. I don't remember what the reason was that he wasn't there. But we did get Thursday early in the day. Ian Carroll and Sneeko had a stream together. I don't really know how long it was, but they did have a stream where they talked about a lot of issues. And one of the clips that came out was it does seem that Ian Carroll seemingly refused to squash the beef with Nick. And so we'll go ahead and play that clip. Here it is.
One stand on business?
Nick also did. Nick didn't fold. And
Nick did? Cool. Well, yeah. I've got beef with Nick for other fucking reasons.
I saw yesterday he said he wants to squash it with you. You know, I hope you guys are able to do that because it is important. Like this,
I mean, to me, it's not personal beef at all. It's just like, what the fuck is wrong with you, bro? Like, you like the last show of Nick's that I watched was him saying that he believes that the bullet that killed Charlie Kirk went through Charlie Kirk's soft tissue, hit the back skin of his neck, bounced off the back skin of his neck, and then ricocheted off his skin into the back of his spine. And that was like the expert that he was citing for how he thinks Charlie Kirk died. I'm like, bro, you're fucking retarded, dude. The Charlie Kirk assassination is the most clear example of how American Jews subvert America on behalf of Israel, which is like Nick's exact thesis about why it's not just Israel, it's also Jewish billionaires and Jewish donors and Jewish saboteurs. Like, that's Nick's thesis. And the Charlie Kirk thing is that exact thesis. Like, am I wrong? Did anyone stand on business?
Nick also did. Nick didn't fold.
So, you first, Josh.
Insane side profile. I don't think I've ever seen. He looks like, you remember that cop that went viral for having like the handsome Squidward thing? He kind of looks like that from the side, but without blonde hair.
Yeah, he definitely got a fresh cut.
He did. But I ordered cheese, not pepperoni. No, I'm kidding. I like Ian Carroll as far as I can throw him, but to me, it's like this is a little aside before I get to the main point here. I love when other people that clearly have beef with Nick, They do these two things every single time. They kind of hand wave it away and say like, oh, you know, it's all because of him. Like it's no big deal. And they say, oh, I don't have time to watch his show. Oh, the last show I watched was when he, you know, was making fun of the Charlie Kirk conspiracy theories. Ian Carroll's not watching Nick's show. Like, what are you doing? What exactly are you delving into and reading? You know what I mean? Like, I get you don't watch every show, but like, let's be honest, Nick is the number one guy in this field. And you're just like, oh, I don't have time to watch it. Like he's what, you?
Well,
and not you, Atlas, but Ian Carroll.
Well, are you familiar with like who he's citing and like who the guy is?
It's been a while, but yes, I remember watching the where like they said it went through his shoulder and it bounced off the skin.
Yes, it was the guy. He goes by the name of JF, right? Was just like John Francis
Yes.
Garapé. He's like the French dude who's like, funny enough, is like in the Epstein files, but just because he got like a payment or something, which is funny. And like he was on stream with Richard Spencer. I don't know if you saw this, but he was telling Richard Spencer some time ago, and even Richard Spencer was like, "You got what from Epstein?" And it's kind of funny, but It's just the fact that Ian refuses to engage with like what was actually laid out with JF. I made note of this months ago when Ian Carroll initially had made the claim, and he still has yet actually engaged with JF's like longer. It's like about an hour and 10 minutes long, and he goes pretty deep on like the tumbling element of the bullet. I don't really know what his background is. I know he's got like a PhD in something, but he's explaining, and he's like citing all these different examples of like bores, right? Bores being shot at these specific distances, the bullet being stuck in the skin, bringing up all these countless examples of all these different ones from all these order forms. And it's just the fact that he's just not engaging with it, you know? And like that to me is always like, it's in the same way you said, he's not even watching Nick's show. And like, how are you going to take a heavy oppositional stance to somebody, but you're not even consuming their content? It's like, what are you then oppositional to, right? Like if you're not actively consuming it, what are you oppositional to? Or what argument? And like, again, he's even just giving out the game, which is like he hasn't even listened to any Nick's argumentation from beyond there either.
Right. Well, and to me, it's like Ben Shapiro saying, "Oh, I don't have time to watch Nick's show" in like 2019, 2020. Yeah, I get it. Ian Carroll saying he doesn't have time to watch Nick's show in 25, 26. Like Nick is the head honcho now. Everyone knows who Nick is. Everyone goes to Nick. Everyone listens to what he has to say. He is the most important guy in the room when it comes to if the room consists of Candace Owens, Ian Carroll, and Nick Fuentes, like, come on, dude.
Right. Well, and then just in general, like just the thing with the bullet overall, it's like I find it's just so disingenuous the way you would treat that. Like say that, given like how many notable examples throughout all of history we have of all these insane things happening with bullets. I mean, the one example I can think of off the top of my head is the guys at the police station who like the police literally do not believe he was shot in the head with a revolver. And he's like, I swear to God, they shot me right in the eyeball. And he was, and the police didn't even believe him. And he was in the station there with the round in his like tucked in his eyeball. They wouldn't believe him. You have these famous instances of a guy who shot a tree, and then 30 years later he chopped it down and it killed him because he hit the primer with his axe and it literally fired out and killed him. You have all these crazy things that like happen with bullets, and then people ended up like they writing off like very early on without engaging with it. It just feels disingenuous to me. And think about this too. The person who put Ian on, who's been like the largest pusher of this, Candace, is now pushing things again, like you brought up, Sumerian technology. Charlie Kirk's like this number one gifted person they've been tracking since the beginning of time. He is a time traveler, like, and all of that somehow like more believable, more substantial than like a possible like weird fluke thing happening with a bullet. I'm just sitting here like it feels like everyone's like lying or being willfully ignorant. And I don't know how you engage with that. It's just not even honest. It's not even honest discourse. I'm not sure how you feel about it. I mean, you've heard all these conspiracies too. I just find it to be like people don't even want or are unwilling to hear. But they're also saying that about the other person. They're saying they're unwilling to hear this theory, but I'm also not hearing anything else but besides what I'm pushing to.
Well, yeah, and let's be honest. What we're hearing when it comes to Charlie Kirk's assassination, for instance, I'm only hearing that can't happen from one side of it.
Yeah.
Like it can't.
Right. Like
We're
very
certain-
conclusively, like it can't. And even since then, we've had a bunch of like changes, right? Like it seems like there's been a bunch of different audios that have come out that seem a little bit conflicting. But overall, I mean, like the whole situation, and you see now too, like I believe it was Baron Coleman had pushed. I hate to say push, but Baron Coleman had reported that I believe it's like now the parents of like the Lance Twigs are now saying they don't believe that they were as involved as like the media and the case is making it to be. I also saw a report that when they got the gun, the DNA evidence coming back from the rifle had 5 different DNA matches to it. And like I had said a long time ago, the way the case is playing out now, what the evidence is what they have, I am in full belief that Tyler Robinson will be, however what happens, whether it's a not guilty or it gets dismissed, I don't think Tyler Robinson's going to get a guilty charge here in this case.
I you know what? When you first said that, Atlas, I'll be honest, I was like, come on, dude. But you might be right. Atlas the prophet.
Hey, like Alec Burton said earlier, dude, I got good instincts. We're honing on him.
This is on the last thing about the Charlie Kirk, the 30-06 specifically. Here's my thing: is if it's common knowledge to anyone who is familiar with weapons that a 30-06 should have blown Charlie's head off, why would they say he was shot with a 30-06?
Right, or that the rifle that was pictured was not even the rifle that they found. And then
to me, that's one of the things. Is it's like recall they didn't catch him, and he was on the run for days, and this was an
like a day and a half,
insanely
right?
sensational. Yeah. This was a high profile assassination. To me, it makes sense that like they planted evidence just to get the ball rolling and to put people at ease, and they like contradicting themselves later. I'm not saying that's what happened, but to me that makes more sense than like this whole operation was pre-planned and then they shot him with a lower. Why not just whatever gun they planned to shoot him with? Why not just say they shot him with that model?
Right. Well, and I think overall, you don't even really have to go anything specific. It's just the fact that from Candace and Barron and Ian Carroll, and many of these other people, they have essentially built and given a lot of people in the public, a lot of, like what Tix is saying, a bunch of reasonable doubt that Tyler Robinson was the one who pulled the trigger. And you know how you're going to find a jury at this point that like doesn't know anything about the case. Like that's impossible, like not happening. And I would imagine the majority of people who even know or have followed the case have followed it from the perspective of Candace Owens. So knowing that going into it, like I just have a huge suspicion because they were talking about how the voluminous evidence. And I also go back and think about how Kash Patel shut down Tulsi Gabbard and Joe Kent like right off the rip, because their argument to them was if you continue the investigation into foreign influence, it's going to weaken our prosecution against Tyler Robinson. But that's also public information. We know that too. And I think that's going to hurt them as well too. Because why would you if you have an open and foreign investigation into foreign influence, that points completely away from Tyler Robinson into somebody else. And given everything coming out about the Epstein files, I feel like we're going to get there, and Tyler Robinson's going to have a pretty easy day in court. Either get dismissed or it'll just end up they'll just say not guilty. Jury won't be able to come to a conclusion.
Not guilty. That's crazy.
Right.
Could be though.
Right. I guess moving forward, we have about 20 minutes, 15 minutes left. There was a little bit of Andrew Tate went again on this kind of circuit, if you will. He went on with Piers Morgan, and I'd play it for you, but it was literally 10 minutes, and you could basically loop the first 2 minutes 5 times. And it was the same back and forth argument from Andrew to Piers Morgan, which was Piers was saying, well, why don't you tell us about how you really feel? Andrew Tate was saying, I find it insane that we're talking about this when the Epstein files dropped 4 days ago. And then Piers Morgan's like, well, no, let me say this. And then Andrew Tate would literally say again, well, it's insane that anybody wants to know. He would just reword it in a little bit of a different way. He's like, but if anybody wants to know more about this story, instead of the pedophilic elite that are ruling you, I guess we'll talk about it. He kept going over and over again. So Andrew Tate is still getting lambasted in the public for the Miami club accost. But I guess moving on to America First that occurred on Thursday, we got Nick responding to JD Vance because JD Vance had once again called for Nick Fuentes to eat shit. And I didn't see the actual interview with JD Vance. I caught a little clip of it, and it seemed like he was just revisiting some of the comments he had made. But this is Nick responding to JD Vance after he called him out again.
Called out again by the Vice President of the United States, JD Vance. Today, in an interview, he formally condemned me. And once again, he's trying to convince me to eat shit. I don't know what to say at this point. I don't want your shit, okay? I know that's what they do in India. I know that's maybe what happens at your dinner table. I don't want it. I don't want your shit. Stop trying to get me to eat shit. I see this interview. He says, oh, I seem to recall I told Nick Fuentes to eat shit. So listen, man, I know that's how they roll where your wife is from. Good for you. I don't need any cultural enrichment. I don't want it. I don't want any of that. Thanks, but no thanks. I'm trying to be polite. I said no once. Now it's becoming sort of an imposition. It's getting to be a little bit impolite. I don't want it. Okay? I try to be nice. I politely declined. Now I have to refuse. I'm not eating it. So save it for the Indian Cultural Festival at the Naval Observatory. I'm good. I like hamburgers. I like hot dogs. I like fried chicken. I'll have the butter chicken, okay? Pass the butter chicken, all right. The curry, I'll try it. The shit, that's a little too far for me. That's a little too much cultural enrichment. It's a little too third world. I'm not that adventurous when it comes to that sort of thing. So I see the statement. He says, I condemn Nick Fuentes. I told him to eat shit. I said, buddy, I know that I did not participate in your cultural festival, but you got to let it go.
I'll let you respond first, Josh.
Well, I actually, Atlas, I wanted to get your thoughts on this because watching this clip, it got me thinking about kind of the nature of excuse me, of Jewish control over our system, Jewish control over JD Vance, and why Nick isn't dead yet. Not to be morbid, but this is something I talk about with Zeb all the time. Is it's like Nick has essentially broken through the mainstream. He's broken containment, so to speak. And Zeb has said that he said this on his show, so I'm not like revealing any inside baseball here, but he's like, you think that this just happens? You think that he just becomes this popular? No, it has to be like controlled or something like that. But to me, this is kind of the point is like the shit eating comment specifically. To me, what that implies, and I know I'm getting into kind of detective work here, but like what it kind of implies is that JD Vance did not see his clip from the first time he said that, because JD Vance saying Nick Fuentes eat shit and him going, oh, what are you having me over for dinner? It's such an obvious joke, and it's a good joke at that. That is funny.
Yeah.
So for him to repeat himself shows that he didn't see it the first time. And what that's got me thinking is we talk about how, oh, you think Nick can just get away with exposing them with all this stuff and get away with that? Like there must be something negative at play here. But think about this. Our problem with Jewish power is Jews controlling our country, Jews controlling the world.
Right.
But the thing we often forget is they're controlling the world. They've got a lot on their plate, and I guarantee Nick Fuentes is not at the top of the charts. He's on their radar for sure. But to me, I don't know. That's what I was just thinking, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that idea.
Well, I think Nick's been pretty open about it. I think he does believe that he will ultimately be targeted, right? I think he said, what was it, at the end of last year? He said that he believed that they're going to strike at the head of the snake. Now, whether that's him or otherwise, I do think there's a real possibility of that. I think him canceling AFPAC, I think, is also a sign to that too. And not even just like from a governmental sense of it as well, but also like, his takes about, with ICE and Renee Good and Pretty. You think about what would a left winger do if they saw Nick out in public as well? And that's just
Right.
kind of the nature of the environment that we're in. But it's the
Well,
same way
and-
that you don't kill anybody. That's a political figure at the level of Nick. You make them a martyr, and then it continues. And it actually like it bolsters the movement to a degree that like was not felt before. And if anything, I think that they can't do it in quick succession. I mean, look at the response after Charlie Kirk. I mean, it literally blew the doors off the JQ. I mean, what would you expect if something happened to Nick? I mean, you would have Groyper just going bananas, right? You'd have Chad Champion streaming like 24/7. Beardson be going off. Tyler Ross be going off. I'd be doing it too. Pine Sap, everybody be coming out the woodwork. They'd go even harder than what they were. And so I think there's still a strategic element of there's probably more. They probably stand to gain more by letting him exist because they know that there's this ever-eating belief that consumes the paranoid elements of the right wing that the longer he doesn't get killed, they think he is a Fed and one of them. And it's more reason to kind of like dissuade them from being a follower of him. So I think there's strategy at play that's probably like a few layers deep that they're thinking about what would be ultimately more consequential and a net positive to them versus, getting a short-term victory.
This was something I said on Outside the Overton before we had met Atlas, is what they're probably going to do. If they ever want to get rid of him, they're going to get a black guy to do it so that he becomes a martyr for white people. You know what I mean? Not specifically a martyr for the anti-Semitic cause.
Would they not? I mean, I think if no matter who got him, I think people would just go with the top assumption.
Sure.
And that's what I mean with the quick
if you
succession with Kirk. Like, I think no matter how it happened, if it happened this quickly between him and Kirk, like I say it happens a month from now, everyone's going to be right back to like, it was Israel who did it, and then what that would do was it would consolidate all the people who who think Nick was an asset would then immediately be like, okay, I guess he wasn't. And then now everyone's consolidated, unified behind a singular mission once again, removing all of the division and consolidating people once again in a more unified front. And I think that's what they don't want. They want to do as much as they can to keep the divisiveness. So it probably plays better into their hand to keep him up and push the elements like they have been with like the Epstein quarter zip, as well as everything else. It's kind of been these smaller kind of nodes that people have chosen to, infight over.
And here's my concern about that is it's like, I think you're absolutely right, where it's like, there's a careful balance at play where if they were to just get rid of him, it would make him a martyr. So they can't do that. It's probably easier to just kind of let it ride, maybe hope he discredits himself or something like that. Right. But eventually they're not just going to not do anything. If we actually start to like meaningfully win, like for example, if JD Vance kicks everyone out of the primary. Nick brought up how Bannon might run or John McEntee might run in the primary. Yeah. But if they just put everything behind Vance and Vance tanks or wins the primary, but then Fuentes and the Groypers help tank the election for Vance, that might be the push comes to shove moment. And I'm not putting anything out there. This is just me sharing my thoughts on it. God forbid. I mean, and that's the thing is I do believe God's got it in the end, and I don't know what the future holds, but I know who holds the future.
So, well, how familiar are you with the Palantir and Peter Thiel and JD Vance connection, and like how it started? And
yes, I'm very aware of like Peter Thiel's start as the PayPal Mafia and how he basically plucked Vance out of Ohio and has Vance is basically like grown in a lab by Peter Thiel.
Yeah. Well, so the crazy thing is that, so like it originally, the goal, the year they wanted JD to win the presidency was originally 2032. And the reason being was because they basically, and again, remember, while Nick was pro-Trump and like door knocking for JD Vance was calling Donald Trump literally Hitler and calling him a Nazi. And there was this period of time where Peter Thiel, and I would imagine both JD Vance as well, were under the belief that the Democrats would win. And they were a lot closer to the Lincoln Project, which is a bunch of the never-Trumpers, a bunch of the right-wingers who walked away the moment Trump became like the guy. And so the plan initially was from them was to basically come in once Hillary Clinton wins as a more kind of commonsensical, like right-wing guy off the back of Hillary. But that's not what happened. Trump won, forcing JD to have this rapid flurry of like changing of positions, which kind of gives you this kind of amalgamation you have now that a lot of people really still aren't that familiar with. And I think there might be an element, because they have planned strategy that long term, they may also be planning for the 2032, which is all signs right now are pointing to the left dominating, both in the midterms and also coming in 2028 and wiping the floor. And if that's the case, JD may find some kind of avenue in which he would distance himself from MAGA, but also open himself up to being the number one candidate in 2032 as well. And I think you're already seeing some of that, the way he has been attacking like the Senate, not the full-blown Trump administration, but he's been very oppositional to the Senate by talking about the people are not happy with what's been getting done. But that could also be easily used on the Trump administration, not just the U.S. Senate. So I don't know if they feel that urgent or not. To answer your question, would they kill Nick Fuentes if he was that oppositional and going to tank J.D. Vance's in this next go-around of the election? I more so expect that would be a thing if it threatens J.D. Vance's like long-term. If it's starting to look like J.D. Vance would never get into a position of power, like we get closer to 2032 and he's beginning to fall out and more guys come in, like say, somebody like a Bannon or a Matt Gaetz supersedes J.D. Vance at that point, with the right wing and change of rhetoric. I just think that it's not that urgent for them in the short term.
And to me, the thing that's concerning also that I'm not hearing a lot of people talk about is Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis was kind of the golden child before J.D. Vance, but he got swept under the rug because he ran against Donald Trump. But think about this. What J.D. Vance is what he is now is he is Trump's golden boy. He is the successor to MAGA for now. But like Nick said this past week, everything that Trump is doing negatively affects J.D. Vance. But who's going to come in if J.D. Vance's reputation is that bad? Who's going to come in and be able to run on, well, I wasn't involved with Trump. I didn't break any promises. Exactly. I was just running Florida. But guess what? Ron DeSantis is just as deep in their pockets as Vance is.
Right.
They've got all angles covered.
Right. And that's why I'm saying expect at some point, I would imagine probably off the back of the midterms, you're going to see J.D. Vance separate himself from the administration. He's going to come out and say, listen, I've tried guys behind the scenes. He's going to reference all these previous reports of him infighting with Walls and the other security advisors, like with the Iranian stuff. And he's going to be like, he might even reference Charlie Kirk. He might even use that to his advantage. He might use the Charlie Kirk thing and say, listen, I was in there with Charlie trying to tell these guys we can't go to war with Iran, and we were on different pages. And he's going to have to use that because he can't run on the promise of the Trump administration right now, right? He can't point to the current administration and be like, do you guys want 4 more years of this? So he's going to have to separate himself from it and say, I will give you the promises that Trump failed on. But that's going to require him to be oppositional. It's going to require him he's going to have to at some point break that ice and make himself an enemy of the current administration.
No, absolutely. I mean, you're going to see Rubio doing the same. And like, it's basically, we're going to have a stage full of people in the Republican primary debating over, we're going to be debating over, okay, Israel's got their hand up every single one of their asses, but is it to the elbow? Is it to the wrist? Like just what degree?
Right. And, I guess we didn't touch much on Friday. And I think that's honestly kind of good because I would encourage people who haven't seen the Friday Super Show on Epstein from Nick Fuentes. It is more than well worth your time to listen to his kind of full-blown, from start to end, the take on Epstein. And as we're talking about J.D. Vance, one of the elements that Nick dives really deep into is the fact that J.D. is like very close to these people being named on the Epstein files. And it is an absolutely must watch. There's a bunch of different elements. He goes in on Lex Wexner, who, because I'm from Ohio, I've always I've heard some rumors and gossip about Lex Wexner my entire life. The guy who's like the primary financier of Epstein. Leon Black was also somebody that he tackled. The Ellisons was somebody else he was tackled. But he really honed in on the Peter Thiel involvement. And I think what was posted not too long ago on X, if anybody's seen it, I don't have the link right now, but there is a photo that Epstein emailed himself that shows Elon Musk and I believe Peter Thiel at a meeting together, all with Epstein. And I think that's going to be the angle that Nick needs to really drive on JD Vance, which is like, what are you doing here with little tech that was trying to buddy up and get in the play, with the organized jury? And but I guess I'll kind of leave it at that. Kind of cover everything full circle. Go ahead.
Real quickly, I was gonna say with all the conspiracy stuff, it's funny is like I'm a Christian and I do believe that Satan is the ruler of this world, but like what exactly does that mean? And it is kind of funny. It just got me thinking with all of the stuff in the Epstein files, all the sensationalism about satanic rituals and stuff. I wonder if Peter Thiel is kind of intentionally playing the bad guy. Like he's got this obsession because listen, he's named all his companies after Lord of the Rings stuff. He's a fantasy guy. Yeah. So I think him having this obsession with the Antichrist and having this closed door session, seminar about it. Wouldn't it be funny if like they just didn't do it? They literally just said that to get people all riled up, but like didn't do anything. Like they didn't actually have it. They just kind of sat around and like were on their phones or something.
Yeah, well, the funny thing about that is I obviously get that Nick doesn't like Whitney Webb, and I get that he thinks that her credibility is a bit overblown, but I would have to imagine that they would probably largely agree with what Palantir ultimately will be. Maybe not on Peter Thiel and who he is, but I feel like they would at least agree on like what Palantir is going to be installed as this kind of surveillance kind of beast. Essentially everything everybody feared from Edward Snowden, the day that he kind of let it be known that everybody, they're all listening to you, you're being recorded all at the same time. And I just hope at the end of the day that we're able to maintain the level of non-censorship that we have right now, because it ultimately gets scary if we can't have the open conversations about JD and Peter Thiel and Vivek and everything here, because that's going to be the number one element that we're going to use against them and, to remove their credibility of why they should not be in positions of power, because why would we install more of the same? But that's a 2-hour mark. Anything else you want to add?
No, man, I thought it was a good show. I thought it was a good week of content. I definitely agree. Even if you're not a Nick fan, go and watch his show from yesterday. Go and watch his expose on the Epstein-Israel connection. It's really good. And again, even if you despise Nick, it's informative. You can't deny that.
Yes, definitely. And just to recap, the broad sense of what he's kind of really pushing is the main element of the Epstein files is the Jewish supremacy. It is the clear in-bias, the not allowing of anybody else in the outside group in of what was occurring in these meetings and the connections they have to the Jewish element, to the ethnicity, to the pattern of behavior, and to what is the historical pattern of behavior of these things as well, and less so the kind of more sensationalized elements of it. And he kind of just really drives the point home, which is it's more important that we tackle the operant element here and less so what is sensational about it, although it is still just as bad. But with that, Christ is King. As always, say Christ is Lord or go home. And with that, well, hopefully we can get Pam Bondi and Kash Patel deported. And if you are any woman giving your opinion, please stop. And that has been a great, it's been a great episode. I know we had a lot of disagreements, but such is the way, is it? And we will see you guys next time. Take care.
Where do you stand politically? Give us your political ideology.
Okay, I can say anything I want.
Yeah, bro. Say yeah. Rumble.
I don't know, the day-to-day stuff, I'm like, yeah, more bullshit. Another white girl got stabbed to death? Of course she did. What do you expect? For my politics, I just watch America First with Nick Fuentes.
Okay.
I consider myself a Groyper. Sometimes I just wait to hear Nick's take to make sure I have the right take before I make videos, you know? So, yeah, I just go with what Nick says. I just defer all my political opinions to Nick Fuentes at this point. I'm America First. I wish that we had white Christian men running the country. It's unbelievable to me that we have a government that has a policy other than America First. How does that make any sense? We pay taxes like use our taxes to benefit the country that we live in.